right, so most of you here know of me or know about me, whether it's personally or not. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sorelle Passo. And when I was preparing for this session, I thought of presenting myself as a financial planner, a wealth manager, which I am. But I realized that that's not my identity. That's not who I am, right? I'm the daughter of the Most High. Okay, that's my identity. But I'm also, I do practice financial planning. I'm a wealth manager for a local bank. I've been doing that for, it really doesn't. I've been doing that for a few years now. And I'm very proud of, the path that I've taken over the past years. But I also wanted to share a little backstory about myself. I grew up, for as long as I can remember, I've always been interested in money. Or finances, should I say. It's not that I'm greedy or anything. And it's probably PTSD from my childhood. And don't get me wrong, okay? I grew up very well. My parents were very hard workers. I never lacked any food, any clothing, any books. Trust me, I'll have a book before I have food. But my parents were very, very proud of education, and it was one of the top priorities in my house. But I remember these talks of my parents about having to write a check to a family member, because my dad was the only one in the family who really succeeded. So he was constantly asked to help. And he did it very well. He never had any issue with that, but he was talking to my mother about the topic of money all the time. And I remember being very self-aware, should I say, self-aware about money at a very young age. I realized that it was a necessity. There you go. And in many ways, I believe that's what shaped me into the woman that I am today, and why money to me is very important. I don't take it lightly, I never did. For some reason, I made some bad decisions, let's be honest. I'm speaking too fast, okay. Okay, so I did make some bad decisions in my life, of course, financial decisions, but I think I have made some pretty good ones. And that's probably the reason why I'm standing here today. So we will go through a series of different topics, light or maybe more heavy than others. Let me just spread this here. And also, just bear with me, okay? I'm not necessarily used to speaking in front of a live audience. No, I'm kidding. I usually do some training at work at the bank, but never this many people, of course. So we're going to go through, do we have cameras? Second page, please. Okay. I wanted to preface this by saying that today is not going to be exhaustive. We're not going to touch on every little topics because it's very vast, should I say, the issue of finances. But I wanted to talk about the tip of the iceberg first. I wanted to talk about the nitty-gritty, the little things that we need to know in order to be savvy, financially savvy, and that's financial literacy. So we're going to start with that today. Let me just make my notes here. I have many notes, I'm sorry. How many of you know where the word money comes from? The Hebrew word monea, which actually means counting. So it means we need to be able to count well in order to amass the money that we need in order to be prosperous and be successful. And that is very important when we're trying to amass money. And I can promise you, if you follow the map that we're going to go through today, you will be able, 100% of the time, able to amass a level of wealth that will be necessary for you to plan, let's say, your retirement or a travel or any expense, as a matter of fact. So we're going to start with the map. First page, please. Well, next page, should I say. Okay, so we first start with the map. What is the map? Well, I came up with these 3 simple steps that you need to have down first. So the first steps is putting together, establishing your net worth. But I'm going to read first the scripture. Sorry, I don't know the scripture by heart. I'm going to have to read. But it says here in Proverbs 27, 23, 24, riches can disappear fast, and the king's crown doesn't stay in his family forever. So watch your business interests closely. Know the states of your flocks and your herds. We don't have that there, don't we? But that's what it says in the scripture. So you are called to know the state of your finances, to be able to build on it. If you don't know exactly how much money you currently own, are you in the red, are you in the green, what is your financial position, okay? So the first step is establishing your net worth. It's a very simple calculation that will allow you to compare the amount of assets that you have versus the amount of liabilities that a person has. So I think I'm already on page 3. Am I? What page? Page 2. Okay. Well, let's move on to page 3 and 4, please. Actually, 4. Okay, so this is a simple math. You know, you have to put together your assets. First of all, you look at your cash. How much money do you have in your checkings account? How much money do you have? Well, how much equity do you have on your house? Cars, other assets that you can consider here. And you have your liabilities. That is your mortgage. That is your car loans. You have student loans, other debt and secured debt. And you total all of this, and you sum it up, and you will have an idea of how much money you actually are worth. And from then, you can start building up. If you are in the red, then you need to start paying off that debt right away. Okay, it's not a matter of carrying debt. No one wants to be 60 years old, 70 years old with debt, okay? So start repaying that debt automatically right away. Am I going too fast? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yes, I did. Well, unsecured debt is debt that is not secured, like a personal loan. There you go. Usually secured debt are attached to an asset. So let's say if you have a mortgage, that's secured debt. If you have a car loan, that is a secured debt. But a personal loan is not secured. So that will be considered unsecured debt. Next page. So I actually have a really fast question. How many of you know what is your financial asset position? Well, where do you stand? Oh, that's great. Okay, perfect. It's really good, but it's very important. That's where you start. So we first start by establishing if we are, in fact, in the red, or if we are in the green. If you are in the red, like I said, what do? You start paying off that debt immediately. In the scripture, it says in Proverbs 15:27, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So you are never going to get out of the hole if you don't first come back out of it. But of course, there is a disclaimer. There are debts that we call good debt. Okay, there are debts that are actually considered a good debt, and that we recommend that you carry all along on a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. Well, that is actually a very good question. Of course, you're not going to be putting in the life insurance amount that you have. It's going to be what we call the universal life insurance. You usually have a remainder, a balance in the life insurance, and that's what you enter. You don't enter the money that will be paid to your estate if you were to pass away, of course. No. Okay? You only enter the value of the life insurance. And that is what you have here in assets. Does that answer your question? Well, I guess it did. Okay. So if you are in the red, like we mentioned, you clear up that debt, you get out of debt. If you currently have debt that is under 4% interest, that is called a good debt. Usually mortgages are within that category. So it is to your benefit to stretch out as long as possible that debt, right? Because you want to use the money that you have available to invest in other things. So if interest, like I mentioned here, if interest on your debt is below 4%, it is a good debt. So you can use it as leverage, like I mentioned. So you can use the extra money that you have laying around to actually invest. So don't be in a rush to repay that debt. Instead, start investing. And if you're here, then we can move on to the step that is following. Yes. Okay. Well, you do calculate it, yes. You calculate it, but don't be in a rush to repay it, because under 4% is money that is that can be leveraged, so you can use it somewhere else. Yes. Okay. Now, if you are in the green, which is the following page, you now need to start focusing on aggressively saving up. Okay. So what I usually recommend, a good rule of thumb, is to save up to 25% of your current income. So that means if you're making $1,000 a week, it is good to save $250 a week. Okay, I know it's a lot, but start small and try to get there, because that's the sweet spot. Okay, that's where you want to be. So, like I mentioned here, so set up a systematic withdrawal. How many of you here know that actually exists? Systematic withdrawal with the bank. Yes. With the bank. Okay, good. Did you know? Okay. So you can actually call up your bank and have them set up a systematic withdrawal from your bank account to an investment account. And from then, they can then take that money and invest it right away. Okay? So that's very important to take advantage of that. You can start, like I said, small. You can start with $25. I think most of the banks start with $25, and then you can you can walk your way up to a higher amount. Well, I mentioned here, it's a good thing to time it with your paychecks. So let's say if you're getting paid every week or every 2 weeks, just have it, go through your account first, and then you can figure out how much you need to spend for that week. So we're moving on to the next PowerPoint, please. Okay, good. So in Luke 14:28, the scripture actually says, "For which of you intending to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it?" So it is biblical to actually sit down and figure out how much money you have available. It is, and I don't have that scripture here, but there's a scripture that mentions too that if you are not planning, you are a fool. So failing to plan actually makes you a fool. So it is important that we are aware of planning. Planning is the heart of the battle. So make up a budget for your living expenses. Do not deviate from your budget under any circumstances. So don't think that because you have $500 in your account that you can just pick up and go, right? It's important to plan ahead of time. What else? I'm trying to just pick up the keywords here. Also, one thing that's very important to know is you have to set up an emergency fund. At first, I know it's not as easy for everybody to have a running balance in their checking accounts. But once you have 3 months accumulated in your account, then you can start investing the rest of the money that you don't use every month. So after you have that settled, you can move on and actually transfer all that money and only keep 1 month in your checkings. The rest of the money you invested, okay? And then after that, you can use a line of credit. Only after that, not before that, because some people have a problem managing debt. It's not a good thing when you're not comfortable enough to start getting debt, right? Banks will offer you many debts and line of credits and credit cards and yada, yada, yada. It never stops. So you have to make sure that you have the nitty-gritty down first. Next page, please. Okay, so once you have your emergency fund, the basis, you now can start investing. So that's what I called here, you're ready to start running. So here, once you have completed all the prior steps that we just went through, you can start building wealth and start gaining financial freedom. Because at this point, you not necessarily need to have money sitting in your account all the time, right? Because you know that you are covered, and the rest can now go into investments accounts. So that's why we're going to now get into the types of accounts that are available, and the vehicles, that's what I call here, and the types of investments, which is the fuel, that are available for you. Does anybody understand what I'm, yeah? Because I'm trying to go slowly, but not too slowly. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the types of accounts. Oh, yeah. 3 months. So it's 3 months of revenue, and that's net revenue, not gross, okay? So if you're making $4,000 a month, then you need to have in your checkings about $12,000. Okay. So moving to the types of accounts. Sorry, where's my water? I'm just going to grab this. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so in Canada, we have about 3 main types of accounts. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to be talking about pension plans or government plans, so that is not included here, but it does exist, okay? We have what we call a LIRA, which is a locked-in retirement account. I'm not talking about that here today. So sorry. So there are 3 main types of investment accounts for individuals in Canada. We have what we call an RSP. An RSP is a retirement savings, registered retirement savings account. We have the tax-free savings account. We have investment accounts that are called also non-registered account. Oh, someone was knocking. Okay. So here's what you need to know about these different types of accounts. Does anybody here are familiar with the types of accounts and what you can open in the bank? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to go through them kind of slowly, just so we have a decent grasp of what's going on. So a tax-free savings account was actually introduced back in 2009. And for someone who was 18 years or older back in 2009, has accumulated up until this date in 2020, $69,500. It's not included here. That was the number last year. So every year, you actually accumulate about $6,000. Last year was $6,000. This year is $6,000. So if you never contributed into your TFSA, your tax-free savings account, you must have a room of $69,500. That is assuming that you were 18 years old back in 2009. So if you're not sure where to find this information, you can find it in your notice of assessment that you can have, on Mon Dossier en ligne. Yeah, you can go online and have it online on Mon Dossier. Okay, so the TFSA is actually considered a gift from the government, because all the money that you put in your TFSA is, has already been taxed, and all the gains that you accumulate from that TFSA is tax-free. So it's very important that you max out your TFSA first. Usually, I don't recommend people to max out the TFSA first if they have a salary higher than $50,000. So let's say if you're making $50,000 a year or higher, you are better off contributing into your RSP first, and then the rest of the money you can put into your TFSA. That's the best way to do it. But if you're making lower than $50K a year, it is recommended that you pay all your taxes on that money, and then the remainder that you have laying around, you invest it into your TFSA. Okay. And so that's why I mentioned here that it is considered a gift, because not many tools, when it comes to revenue, not many tools are allowing you to not pay taxes on the revenue. This is the only thing that will allow you to not pay taxes on money that you're making in Canada. So it is really good, and I recommend that everybody uses it. So it's recommended to max it out. Next page. I thought I saw a question. Okay. Okay, so this is a little, yes. Yes, Celine. Well, now you're talking about investments in the TFSA. I'm going to get there. Yes, I'm going to get there. We're gonna cover it. No problem. So if we look at the little graph here, these are all the contribution rooms that somebody would have accumulated since 2009. So back in 2009, it was $5,000. And over the last 2 years, it was $6,000. We only have 1 year that was 10,000. And I believe that was when Trudeau was being elected, something like that. So we had, we had a little gift from them. It was Harp. Okay.
But let's just, I don't know exactly what year, but let's say it was in 2015, but I have not made those contributions.
Okay.
Can I now, if I have the funds, backfill?
Yes, of course. So it's FSA.
But I can't backfill until 2009, it's just till when I open my account?
No, you can backfill back to 2009. So if you never opened up a TFSA account, you still have that room available. Yes. As soon as you open one, you can go all the way back to the years. Exactly. So you have to be old enough from the year you're 18, you can calculate all that room. Yes. Yes. Very good. Mm-hmm. 69,500, yes. Yes, so we're currently in 2020. So ever since, yes, the beginning of this year, we accumulated another $6,000. So we're now up to $69,500. Okay, so next, the RSP. So the an RSP is a registered savings account plan, and it is a retirement account by excellence. That is the account that you want to use, especially if you don't have a pension plan with your employer. It is the best tool to save for your retirement, only because it allows you to defer the taxes that you are currently paying. So let's say if you contribute $10,000 in your RSP this year, that money will be deducted from your annual gross income, and you're only going to be taxed on the rest, the remainder. Sorry, and you're only going to be taxed on the remainder. So that will allow you to not pay taxes on that $10,000 and only push it further down the line when you retire. Okay, so it is a really good plan, and that's why I recommend investing in this plan, especially if you're making over $60,000 a year, $50,000 a year in salary. Coming up. That's a really good question. For an RSP, you can actually withdraw anytime you want. You don't have to retire to withdraw. Exactly. So the moment you pull the money out, then you get taxed on it. Okay, so you have to make sure that you really need the money before you withdraw from an RSP.
But when you retire, it comes up to a certain age, or I mean like you retire at 60 or 65, it would be the same.
Okay, well, it's not going to be the same calculation. So let's say, well, I believe you're talking about the minimum withdrawal, right? There's a minimum withdrawal percentage that everyone is submitted to, but that's only when you turn 71 years old. So once you turn 71 years old, then you are submitted to a minimum. So you have to withdraw. You have no choice, even if you're still working. And we'll still have some doctors, and I know Nancy probably knows what I'm talking about, but there are some doctors that work until they're 75. But they have to withdraw. It doesn't matter if, you know, they're forced, they're obligated to withdraw. But just to answer your question, I'm coming to you, Steve. You can withdraw anytime, okay? You don't have to wait until you retire to withdraw. Yes?
The RSP fund, if
Okay.
you withdraw,
Mm-hmm.
now, what is the interest rate? Like $100 million percent?
No, it's not $1 million. No, it's not. But the percentage. Okay. Well, usually most of the banks will retain a minimum amount. It's usually up to 30%, okay? I know at the Laurentian Bank is 31% they withhold at the bank to send to the government. And then at the end of the year, when you do your tax filings, then from there, you can either, if you made no money that year, then you can obviously have a return from the government. But the bank will withhold some of the money.
So the interest rate is actually increasing. Well, we don't, because I
Okay, so,
years ago,
mhm.
it wasn't 30%.
Right. No, but then you're talking about the taxation rate, right? No, but the interest rate is something else. You know, you continue to make your interest or your return on your investments in your account. That doesn't change. But the moment you withdraw, all the money that you're withdrawing is taxable. Okay, so it's not like an investment or a non-registered account that only the interest or the yield that you have accumulated that is taxed at that point. The capital is not taxed in an investment account. But in a registered account, everything is taxed, whether it's capital or interest.
The RSP, if you like decided to stop, I don't want to contribute anymore, what happened?
Okay, so if you decide to not contribute, it's up to you. It's your account that you open. Usually banks will open that account for you, and then you can contribute every year. If a year you don't feel like contributing, you don't contribute. You're not forced. It stays there, yes.
You get to your, like, if you want to withdraw or if you want to buy.
Exactly. If you want to withdraw, you just ask your bank. Yes, and you just withdraw. Okay. Like I mentioned, it is the best way to save for retirement, and all the gains that are accumulated in the vehicle are not taxable until you withdraw. So because of that, it creates an opportunity for exponential gains because you are making money on the government's money, right, technically. So that's why it is important to max out your RSP. Okay, so we're now moving on to the non-registered account, non-registered investment account, okay. Okay, so to me, this is the fun part. I know for many people it's not that fun because you cannot do many things with it. But non-registered investment accounts are really good because all the money that you put in a non-registered account have already been taxed. Okay, so you have your capital, let's say you're putting 100K, that money has already been taxed. Only the returns that are taxed at that point. Non-registered account are taxable investments accounts available for Canadian citizens. And well, I'm not going to read that, but sorry, I missed my train of thought there. Okay, so non-registered accounts are flexible, so it offers tax advantages because you have no contribution limits. So you can put up to $1 million into an investment account. There's no problem. You can put 2 million, 10 million, 30 million. There's no cap because it's non-registered. Non-registered means the government has no clue of how much money you have in there. Okay, it's not the same thing as an RSP or a TFSA where they're actually monitoring every year how much money you have contributed. And that also explains why in an RSP and a TFSA, if you over-contribute, you get penalized. Okay, there's a fee that you will be charged. So it's very important to make sure that you're not going over the minimum that is allowed. Okay, so in investment accounts, you can actually have many types of investment accounts. You can have a margin account that allows you to borrow and invest the money that you have borrowed in this account. That's what we call a margin account, and that is leverage. Okay, and you can also have a cash account. For people that don't want to borrow money, they open a cash account, investment account that allows them to invest the money that is deposited there. And from there, you can start earning capital gains, dividends, and interest income. No problem. Okay, so we can move on to the next page, please. Okay, so in this account, like I mentioned, for me, this is where the fun happens because at this point is how you are able to optimize your taxation. For people that have already maxed out their RSP and they've already maxed out their TFSA, what is left to do is you have no choice but to be taxed on the capital gains that you earn in those investment accounts. And because you have no choice but to be taxed, it's very important to look into the fiscality. as we call in French, but the taxation that is involved in this type of sub-accounts. So many banks actually offer what we call the corporate class investment. How many of you know what that refers to? Yes, well, usually people don't know that, but it actually exists. It's a type of investment that allows you to yield more capital gains and dividends and less interest. Okay, because interest is taxed at a higher level. So you want to earn less interest and you want to earn more capital gains. And in this account, it really matters because you are taxed on it. Okay. So, like I mentioned, many banks and financial institutions have these types of investments, but not all of them. So just be sure to really look into them. I'm not going to mention them, okay? If you want to know, come and talk to me afterwards. But many banks don't have that. Some of them do. But like I said, it allows you to really be efficient in terms of how much taxes you are to be paying. So make sure that you are being tax efficient and investing into these corporate class investments. So now, how do we really make money in these accounts? And I'm going to come to your question, Miriam, here. We're going to talk about the types of investments that we can actually have in these accounts, because it's really good to open an account, but then once you open the account, what do you do with the money that's in there, right? So that's what we're going to see. So far, so good? Okay. Okay, moving on. All right, so first of all, before you start investing, you need to make sure that you know what is your investor profile, okay? Many of us, or some of us, are very conservative. So we have people that are saying, well, I don't want to risk my money. I don't care how much return you're going to give me. I just don't want to risk my money, okay? We have investments that allow you to earn a higher interest or expected interest. And that's what we're going to talk about. But like I said, first you need to know how much risk you're willing to take. Because if you want to earn 15% a year, but you're only willing to take this much risk, that's not going to happen, right? So you have to also just make sure that you are aligning to your objectives.
I think you said there's an online questionnaire that you can fill out.
Oh, yes, yes. I think I included that in this form, did I not? Yeah, I think it's somewhere. There is a link. Of course, we cannot, it's a link, so you have to type it in. But you can actually go online and figure out how much risk or what is your risk tolerance. Because from then, you will be able to decide what type of investment better suits you, better suits your needs, and what type of investments will get you to where you're trying to go. So first of all, if you are someone that is very conservative, let's say you're not willing to take any risk, then usually banks would just say, in that case, go with a GIC. So they will offer you a GIC, which is a guaranteed investment account or guaranteed investment certificate, and that not only guarantees your capital, but also guarantees interest. Okay, but usually you cannot have that high of an interest with those type of investments. And so that's why if you're looking to yield more interest than, let's say, 2%, then you have to look into a little bit riskier investments. So here, these are the main types of investor profile. So the main types here are adverse. Well, let's say if you're adverse to risk, like I mentioned, you're conservative. So you're a conservative investor. And if you can somewhat tolerate risk, then you're balanced. So you will be called a balanced investor. And if you can take more risk and you're very aggressive, then you're an aggressive investor. Of course, there are subcategories. You can be in between here. You can be very somewhat conservative, or you can be balanced or moderate balanced, and so on and so forth. Right? Okay, so like I mentioned here, the type of investors that you are, you must consider also the time horizon that you have. Meaning, so how long do you have until you need to unequivocally withdraw your money? And I said it's trivial, but that's not the right word. What I meant to say is it's very important, okay? That's not the right word. Vital. There you go. That's what I was trying to get at. So it is vital. You have to know exactly how much time you have in front of you before you invest. If you're thinking of buying a house in 2 years, it's probably not a good idea to invest into something that's too risky. Because what if the market crashes within the next 2 years and your money is down a third? You know? So first, you decide how much time you have. That's called the time horizon. Once you know what is your time horizon, you can then move forward to deciding what investment will better suit your position or your situation. I'm just going to change that vital. Okay. Sorry, here. Vital. Okay. Or if you are an aggressive investor, then, oh, sorry, that's not what I meant. But if you're an aggressive investor, so you're someone that is willing to take a lot of risk, but you only have 1 year, like I mentioned, you cannot go ahead and invest into stocks, for instance, because it's going to be very volatile, and you don't want to be in a position where your money is so down that you have to wait, right? Because if you need the money, you need the money. And that's what happened back in 2008, because people that were retiring at that time, they were the people that lost the most money because they had no choice but to withdraw. But if you are someone that has time in front of you, then you don't care if the market is down. You can just let it go, and it always comes back up. Okay? Okay. Okay, so next page. The next page is just the same thing. So being a conservative, balanced, or aggressive investment refers to the amount of risk that you are willing to take in order to expect a certain return. And returns have a positive correlations to risk. So the more risk you take, the greater your potential to losses and returns. Okay, it goes both ways. But usually people make more gains than they lose. So it's just a matter, it's a time game, right? You have to have the time in front of you. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the types of investments. So we have what we call, like I already mentioned, GICs. GICs are Guaranteed Investment Certificate. And, well, you can have GICs, sorry, or term deposits. They're classified in the same category. Term deposits are usually the redeemable investments. So they're investments that you can redeem. So usually the rate is lower in a term deposit compared to a GIC because a GIC, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Because a GIC is guaranteed, so the interest is guaranteed and the money will be locked. So the bank will take your, let's say, your 50K, and they will invest it for you, but they're only going to give you in return, let's say, 2%. But the money is locked for a certain period of time, so you cannot redeem that money. Compared to a term deposit, that is redeemable. So usually a term deposit will yield a lower interest rate. Okay, so we also have mutual funds. So mutual funds are offered by banks or institutionalized investment or institutions, should I say. And you also have segregated funds that are offered by insurance companies. They're just the same word. I mean, they pretty much mean the same thing. Mutual funds are offered by banks, and segregated funds are offered by insurance companies. And the main difference in those different funds is just that insurance companies will charge a higher fee in terms of MERs, what we call management expense ratios. So you will pay a little bit more if you are invested with an insurance company in terms of fees. I need to drink some water. So far, so good. Any questions? Mm-hmm. No, it's not. Sorry. GICs are actually manufactured by banks. So it goes from a bank to an investor, whereas bonds are usually manufactured by either the government or blue chips companies, so huge companies. So that's the main difference. But usually, of course, bonds are somewhat secured. They're not completely secured, so I can't compare the two. No. Mhm.
For Mandy, but you would recommend that it stands a little bit more in depth for those of us who have questions?
That's a very good point. Well, I have my financial planner book. I don't think. Well, I can give you the credentials if you like to buy them, to buy the book. Yeah. Okay. Can do that. Okay. So we have GICs, like I mentioned, GICs and term deposits. We have mutual funds that are offered by banks and segregated funds that are offered by insurance companies. We also have stocks. Okay, stocks can be privately or publicly owned. And the difference between stocks is, well, between private and public is, let's say me, Sorelle, I open a company. It's going to be privately owned, so I'm going to own stocks of my company. It's not going to be public. But let's say Apple. Apple is a company that's publicly traded, so that's a public company, and so you can buy the stocks of that company. Okay, so that's the main difference here that I'm talking about.
Is it secure? Like, I mean, do you suggest as an investment?
What do you mean?
The stocks.
The stocks? Okay, well, usually stocks are not secured. They're by definition not. That's aggressive, okay? Unless you're investing into what we call blue chip companies. Blue chip companies are something like Apple stocks or Google stocks. They're companies that are so mature that are almost considered, almost considered secured. Their stocks, but it doesn't take away the fact that the company is going to fluctuate, right? So you're still going to have that volatility that's included in the stock.
I asked this to my colleague before about stocks.
Mm-hmm.
Contribute in stocks. Is there like a specific amount of money that like minimum to be to buy a stocks, or how do you?
Okay. So that's a very good question. Many people are looking to buy stocks, but it's not that easy to get your hands on, because let's say if you go to a bank and you open up an investment account with a bank, they're going to offer you a mutual fund. Okay, and a mutual fund is almost like a pool of many stocks, right? So you cannot decide which stock you really want to own. Whereas if you want to directly buy your own stock, then you have to open what we call a direct investment account. Okay, so that way you can buy your fund, but you decide to buy or sell. So you become your own manager, and that can be tricky. Okay, so that's the difference. No problem. Okay, so we have stocks that can be privately or publicly owned, and we have exchange-traded funds that are ETFs. Exchange-traded funds are almost like stocks in the way that they're not managed by anybody, right? So in an ETF, you go on the trading account, let's say trading account website, and you buy your ETF, and it's up to you. You might lose some money, you might gain some money, but no one is there to look. Well, Bitcoin is a different. Yes, I'm not going to be mentioning Bitcoins today because it's not. I didn't. Because it's a cryptocurrency, so it's almost like trading on Forex, but it's a currency. It's almost like a stock, but it's very volatile too. Yeah. Okay. And we also have derivatives and alternative investments, and that's a whole other topic. Like I mentioned earlier, finances can get hard and tricky really fast. Okay, because if you enter the whole world of derivatives and alternative investments, usually mutual funds manager are the ones that are playing with that because it's called exotic. Okay, they're exotic products. And like I mentioned here, the list is not exhaustive, but these are the main categories. Okay, so I wanted to touch on a few specifications for you that I believe is important to know. For instance, interest is taxed at the highest level, compared to dividends and capital gains. And the reason is that interests are considered a revenue. So when you're yielding or you are earning interest, usually interest comes from GICs. And because that revenue is certain, it's considered a revenue. Okay? And that is the reason why it's taxed at the highest level. It's taxed almost like a salary. Whereas dividends and capital gains, they're not predictable. And so it's almost like investing and waiting and see what's going to fall down. And so the government doesn't tax it as high as an interest. So you want to be yielding, like I mentioned earlier, you want to be yielding more dividends and more capital gains and less interest. So let's say interest return is considered, well, that's what I just mentioned actually. Okay. For instance, capital gain is only taxed at 50%. So let's say you're yielding capital gains, well, I'm going to start from the beginning. You invested $10,000, and that $10,000 yield $500 of capital gain in a specific year. Then you're only going to be taxed on $250. Whereas if you yield $500 in interest, then you're going to have to be taxed on the whole $500. So that money will be included into your revenue of that year. So it's pretty high. Okay, so you want to look closely into that, especially if you have higher amounts of money to be invested. You want to make sure that you are not putting all your eggs into interest yielding fund or interest yielding tools. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, go ahead.
It says capital gain has a 50% inclusive rate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the condition would work if I buy and hold the stock for how long? Is that 1 month or?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, usually, let's say if you have a stock, when a stock, let's say, grows, that's capital gain. That's not considered interest.
Okay.
Yes, so it's capital gain.
Okay. Because I'm just worried if it becomes, let's say, trading.
Okay.
You get in and out in, let's say, 10 hours.
Oh, well, in that case, that becomes revenue. It's not
Yeah.
the same thing. Yes. So let's say if you become a trader, it's considered income from an activity. So it's not capital gain anymore. It's revenue.
So it will be 100%.
So it's 100% taxed. So it's very tricky. So you have to make sure that you know exactly in what pool you're playing. Yeah.
And so to get the, let's say, capital gain at a 50% inclusive rate, so what's the time frame?
Okay.
You don't get in and out too quick, but what's the minimum time? Is it that a month?
Well, there's not necessarily minimum time, and that's a very good question because I recently have came across this client who is doing some trading, and the first year he was good, he was okay, but the second year he was flagged by the ARC because he was doing too many transactions. So it's based on the transactions that you're doing. It's not based on the time. You can be trading once a month, and at the end of the year you trade 12 times, 13 times. That could be considered trading, trading for revenue. Yes, and at that point you will be taxed. Okay, that's a very good question. Yes. Well, I kind of want to start by saying the reasoning behind it is because dividends are called by a company. So let's say at the end of the year or at the end of the fiscal year, a company will decide how much dividends they're paying, right? So it's called and decided by the company. Whereas capital gains is not based on any decisions within the company, it's based on the value of the company, right? And so that is why there's a difference in taxing at this point. Did I answer your question? Okay. All right, so therefore the rule is to favor types of investments that yield dividends and capital gains better than investments that will yield interest. All right, so one last, can we move on to the next page, please? Oh yeah, is that the page? Okay, good. Okay, so compound interest is was called by Einstein the eighth wonder of the world, because time is your best friend. And when I say time, you don't need to have 50 years old. Sorry, you don't need to have 50 years in front of you to invest. You can have 5 years, but still it's time. You have to make sure that you take advantage of that time. Did you know that $1,000 that you invested back in 1934 in American stocks will be worth today over $8 million? That's the thing. We all wish we were born back in 1934, but That, yes, but that really tells you a lot about the time that we have. It's important to start investing early because all the times and all the years that you're spending not investing, that money could be generating or growing for you. Let's say if someone is spending $1,000 today on Beats headphones, they're now really, really expensive. In 30 years, that headphones would have cost you $10,000. That's really expensive. So sometimes before we spend, think about what is the time value of that money, especially if you cannot afford it. If you can't afford it and you're already saving and you're already putting everything in place, then that's fine. We have to leave a little, right? We can't save it all. But if you're not saving and you're not putting some money aside for your retirement for older days, then the $1,000 that you're spending today have so much value. Okay, so it is important to think about the time value of the money. And we have this nice scripture here in Proverbs 21:20. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but the foolish man devours all he has. So in the Bible it actually says, if you're not putting money aside, then you're a fool, and you eat everything that you have. So compound, I can't say that word today. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. That was said by Albert Einstein. So I have a few rules of thumbs here that I wanted to share with you before I leave. That leverage can be a very powerful tool. So if you use it correctly, you can actually get richer. And I don't know if I explained what leverage is, but leverage is making money with someone else's money. Banks do that all the time, because you put your money there, they take your money, and they invest it, and they give you 2%, let's say. Right, so they're not making nearly as small as 2%. They're making, over 10%, 20%. So if you know how to invest, and if you know how to leverage, and especially if you have the space to leverage, it is very powerful. So I suggest that you use it. Because 10% on $100,000 is $10,000, whereas 10% of $1,000 is $10. So you're running a lot faster with a lot more money. Right, so that's the reasoning behind leverage. Deferring taxes is also the better choice, except in few occasions. But usually, it is recommended to defer your taxes. So that is investing into registered accounts, retirement saving plans, and TFSA. Always buy low and sell high. So the reasoning behind that is, let's say we're talking about stocks earlier, but when the market is crashing and the money, everything is down, it's never the time to sell. It's never the time, it's never a good idea. And I have many clients, this is also my job, that call me and they're saying, Sorelle, well, the market's going down, I'm panicking. Well, that's my job to tell them, well, we decided together that you had 5 years, yeah, you had 10 years. Let's wait it out, okay? So it's always good to wait out because the market is cyclical, it will come back up. So always buy low and sell high. If the market is down, that means everything is low, so you don't sell. It's the time to buy. There you go. It's the time to buy. Well, it's currently a good time to buy, to be honest. The market is slow because everyone is waiting for Trump and the elections in the States. Right. So it is a good time to buy. Of course, we're not in a recession, so it's not extremely low, but it's still a good time to buy. Yes.
Well, Truman said, and I'm going to piggyback off of your question.
Mm-hmm.
When all things are equal,
Mm-hmm.
a person has $15,000, $20,000 to invest.
Okay.
What would you suggest?
Okay.
What type of investment or
Well, first of all, in which account are you invested? In which account? Is it a retirement savings plan? Is it a TFSA?
no, this is just disposable income?
Okay, disposable income. So that's money that is laying around that you don't know what to do with. Well, in that case, I recommend, first of all, to maximize your retirement plan, RSPs, TFSA, and then from then, you decide where to invest.
That's not me, by the way. It's just-
No, well, yes. No, of course, but I'm talking to you like it was you, right? Okay. Okay, so once you have put the money somewhere, then you decide. Now, if you have time in front of you, let's say you have 10 years to invest, or 5 years, or even 3 years, still okay. You can. I will usually strongly suggest to put into mutual funds, okay, on the market, not GICs. GICs are too low, and currently it's even lower. Historically, it's never been this low. So it's not a good idea to go into GICs. So I will say go into mutual funds. Now, if you are an investor that can tolerate risk, and you say, well, I don't mind if my money goes down a little bit, I can take it, then in that case, go a little bit more aggressive. So buy more shares, more stocks, less bonds, and you should be good to go. No problem. So the last rule of thumb here is get 3 sources of income to build wealth rapidly. So I like to consider that salary and returns on your invested capital counts for 2. So when you're investing properly and you have a good salary, you're already making 2 good steady incomes. So you can now, decide whether or not you want to add a third one. But it's great. Once you have 3 incomes, you're running. Yeah. Yes.
So I understand that you guys spend from deposits in mutual funds.
Mhm.
So the stocks and derivatives, you're saying that individuals do that themselves?
Yes.
The other two,
Yes, individuals can play around with derivatives and stocks, but if you're not educated, I never recommend it because it can be really tricky and you can lose a ton of money because it goes even faster than mutual funds. You can lose $10,000 within a night on the stock market. So exactly. So you need to make sure that you're educated, that you have got some good training. Otherwise, just leave it to the experts, right?
for the mutual funds and segregated funds, so what are examples of insurance companies that offer the segregated funds?
Well, all the insurance companies, you have Sun Life, Manulife, Industrial Alliance, they all offer segregated funds. Yes.
But as you said, they're more expensive.
They're more expensive because the reason why they're more expensive is within that fund, there is an add-on that they call, it's an insurance in the fund. So, and they're broker fees, that can be really expensive, yes. So you have to make sure you compare.
Is your return higher?
The returns are usually the same as mutual funds, but I would say mutual funds are mainly based on the skill of the fund manager. If the fund manager is not skilled, it doesn't matter where you are, you're not going to do that good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think Pastor Kathy has something to say.
It was more of a comment. So we get in green,
Mm-hmm.
we have to get those essentials set. So we get a salary, we get the basics done, we max out the RSP and the
Yes.
CIF done.
And TFSA.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or the other order, depending on what kind of income we got. And once we are in that state, we save enough that we can use money that is beyond that
Mm-hmm.
to be a little more aggressive and to.
Well,
Investments?
Well, almost. You can be aggressive into your RSP as well. You don't have to, leave that money sitting there, right? You need to invest that money as well.
You learn in that aspect.
Exactly.
You have money that you cannot put in there because you met your max, and you build on.
Then you build on it, yes. But start investing, no matter which account you are, just start investing. And depending on your tolerance, you can be more aggressive or less aggressive. Yes. No, it's totally good. I think you had a question.
You said earlier that it's recommended to have 3 months.
Yes.
uh,
Emergency, yes.
So then you would recommend that if those 3 months are not there, not to start investing? You would recommend to start investing 1 month?
Well, nowadays that everything is so fast, you can actually put your emergency fund into a TFSA. So let's say you can open up a TFSA and put your emergency fund there, because within 4 days a bank can withdraw your money and give you money if you really need it. So you don't necessarily have to keep it in your checkings account unless sometimes it happens a lot that you need a huge chunk of money. then in that case, just keep it in your checkings. But you will be good, to keep a month of revenue in your checkings, and the rest you can just put it into your TFSA and start investing. Yes, no problem.
I understand you work in the bank, but it's just that I have a family, like say I invested in the ARSP or other investments in the bank,
Okay.
and if God like want to take me out from this world, so those investments in the bank,
Mhm.
are they? Can we put beneficiaries on those?
Well, not in Quebec. Not in Quebec. You cannot choose beneficiaries into your, on your investment accounts. But it's better for you to do it into your will, so your testament. But in Quebec, it doesn't work. So let's say if you put a beneficiary in your RSP and you were to pass away, that money is not necessarily going to go to the person that you chose on the RSP.
So when you put in the will, supersedes everything else.
Exactly. So putting in the will supersede everything else. But in Quebec, even if you put it into your account, it's not going to go to that person. It will go in priority to the person that are supposed to receive your money. Yes. Yes. So I believe we finished it all. Yes, we covered it all. Good.